what did you want to be when you grew up?
The first job I can remember, I wanted to be a nurse or a computer engineer because that's what my parents did. Then I think we went on a trip to SeaWorld and I wanted to be a marine biologist. And then for a bit I wanted to be a doctor, but my mum, being a nurse, strongly discouraged this because she knew I wouldn't be able to do the night shifts.
I think it's good to have people there with experience sometimes. They'll be like, no, don't do that, you'll hate that.
Yeah, she was really good. She was like she wasn't like, don't do it. Like, she organised loads of work experience for me at the hospital because you need to have like 10 weeks work experience or whatever to get into medical school. But she was always very like, are you sure you know what you're getting into?
Leeds, what is happening? Welcome to episode 19 of Working Hours, a show about a place called Leeds, a time called now, and an activity called work. My name is Simon and you're listening to my guest Kathryn Irish. This is another Zoom interview recorded on the 9th of July 2021. Kathryn Irish is a digital marketing specialist at NUGEN Audio. NUGEN Audio's products offer market-leading fidelity and unrestricted creativity in every situation, providing a direct and intuitive way to work with sound. The company's tools make it easier to deliver high-quality, compliant audio while saving time, reducing costs, and preserving the creative process. Kathryn also teaches coding on a volunteer basis at Code First Girls. You can visit Code First Girls at codefirstgirls.org.uk. If you're a learner and you're listening to this and you think you might be able to answer some questions that you already know the answers to, then please get in touch with me to arrange time for us to record you for this show. Email me at workinghoursPod@western-studios.com. Put in a short bio and some suggestions of your availability. Also drop me a line if you have any queries or feedbacks, complaints or compliments. If you can be generous and wonderful enough to leave me a review, then please do so. I still haven't had any feedback yet, so it would be great to see some. If you can leave a really good review for me, please, that would be really good.
Okay, so what is it that you're doing now then?
So now my official job title is digital marketing specialist.
Okay.
Normally whenever anyone asks me what I do, I just say that I do tweets. But I do a sort of a mixture of, I guess, social media marketing, email marketing, a little bit of like web design, kind of like user experience design, and quite a lot of data analysis as well.
So is that on a freelance basis? Is it a full-time position, or is it your own business, or how does that work?
So I'm currently doing that for a small software company called NUGEN Audio. So we make audio plugins used by people who, kind of a mixture of companies and freelancers, I guess, but people that may be making a TV show for Netflix and they need to meet the kind of specific Netflix audio standards. So we kind of make software to help with that. So I'm doing that full time. I occasionally do a little bit of freelance marketing as well. And I also do some freelance work teaching and promoting an organisation called Code First Girls, who aim to encourage more women to get into tech by learning coding.
Okay, so do you code yourself?
Yeah, I do quite a lot of coding. I think it's something my dad kind of taught us when we were very young, just because he used to kind of like teaching us stuff, and he's quite into sort of electronics and computing. And then I got really into it when I was about 17, because there was a summer holiday where I was just really bored and I had nothing to do. So I just started taking like online classes, and then I kind of kept it up when I went to university, dropped it for a bit after I finished university, and then I've been kind of getting back into it ever since the pandemic started. And again, I was just kind of bored and had nothing to do. So I was like, well, I guess I'll go back to coding. And since then, I've kind of gotten quite involved with Code First Girls. And I've also, this job I'm doing at the moment, I've only been doing for about 6 months. And that's kind of opened up a lot of opportunities for me to use it more at work as well, because I'm doing a lot more data analysis rather than just marketing on its own.
So did you go down like you said you went to university, were you studying like a technical qualification there, or was it a marketing qualification?
I studied maths at university,
Okay.
which is just, I don't know. It's quite a like well-respected degree, but I also look back on it and I don't know if it's that useful a degree. Like it's not, like some mathematicians are very can be a little bit snobby about it and be like, oh, well, engineering's just applied maths. But I always kind of think like, but at least in engineering, you're kind of learning to do something practical. But, in maths, you kind of learn a lot of very abstract things that you can only really use if you become an academic of maths. But I found it does suit me quite well because I studied a lot of statistics. And although it's not, marketing isn't necessarily the like most obvious kind of path to go into from a maths degree, there definitely are kind of aspects of my maths degree that are quite useful. And I found a couple of other people who've come from studying maths who've kind of ended up in some kind of marketing as well. And I think especially for digital marketing, there are a lot of numbers. So I guess it kind of makes sense there.
I'm thinking there that, you're talking about maths and you're talking about coding, and there's sort of, and you say maths isn't particularly useful necessarily. But I think there's something there in that, your coding is a bit mathsy, it's like levels of abstraction and being able to think like, something representing something else. I think there's something there.
I think there probably is something there, but it's just, I guess, it is more difficult to quantify than, like, my little brother's studying engineering and he'll probably study that and then he'll become an engineer, and it's, I learned this and I'm using this. Whereas I guess with maths, there probably are things I've learned that I am using, but I'm not sure which ones.
Yeah. So what brought you round to the marketing side then? Was that sort of starting your own businesses or working on small businesses? What brought you into that?
I don't know, I absolutely fell into it, to be honest. I finished uni, and in my final year I'd kind of done one of these like student union elections. So I'd run to be the community officer of Leeds University Union and kind of put a lot of eggs in that basket, but didn't win. And then I was like, well, I need a job. And I ended up getting a job as a trainee accountant at Leeds City Council. And I was there for about 3 months before I was like, no, I don't like this.
I don't want to go down this route.
It was a really it was a great scheme. I think a lot of people, when I was like, I'm going to leave, a lot of people were like, what are you doing? But
yeah, you're mad.
A lot of people are like, you've got a really like steady job here. They're going to like put you through your qualifications and you've got a guaranteed raise over the next 4 years. Like, what on earth are you doing? But I sort of started looking for other jobs, and an internal role came up, which was doing kind of community engagement for the recycling department. And within my attempt to become the community officer, I'd recorded a video and put it online of me singing a song about bins. So I basically sent that in to the recycling department, and they were like, I went and had an interview, and they were like, yeah, I mean, if you can write a song about bins, you can come and do this job.
Nice.
Yeah, I was there for about just over a year and a half, kind of working in the recycling department, and that's how I kind of got more into, I guess that was kind of like comms, and then from there I was able to kind of step into a more kind of corporate marketing role. So yeah, quite a weird journey.
I think they're normally weird. Weird's kind of the common factor with a lot of people's work journeys, especially now that you don't have these sort of, since the long-term jobs have gone, people change careers so much and so often. I mean, I've worked in all sorts of things, just like all the time, different sectors, and you learn different things about them every time you're working in a different sector, don't you? It's not just about lingo, it's like how the whole thing works, and the different types of specializations and all these different bits. Like, I worked at a company briefly that was selling bricks, And I didn't know that there was so much to know about bricks. I was just like, a brick's a brick, isn't it? And it's, but they're all different and all different styles and hundreds of them. And it's like, oh, who knew there was so much to know about bricks?
It's exactly the same with bins. I think there's so much detail in these kind of like mundane things that you never realize how much technology and research and work goes into something like bricks or like recycling or whatever, and then when you get into it, it is just like you can really go down the rabbit hole, can't you?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of work, and sort of across the board, seems to be, a lot of it seems to run a bit like a theatre production, where you've got this front of like, this is what's happening at the company or on your website, and then you go the back end or around the corner, it's just chaos and everything's like, just make it work.
Yeah, I definitely think that's accurate.
So how do you find the role? I mean, is it challenging? Is it varied? Is it quite samey? Yeah, do you feel that you need to change position quite often? Is that like how you develop through your career of just, it's not, you have to move on to another job, to a new challenge to kind of develop things? Is that the sort of route, the process?
I definitely think so far I have been chopping and changing quite a lot. So far, I'm 6 months into this job, and I think I can see myself kind of sticking at this one for a while. And I suppose to answer the question before, I think my job is super varied. I have a lot of freedom to kind of work on a lot of different things. Like I like to think of myself as like a bit of a jack of all trades, where especially because I work in a very small company, I have a lot of freedom to kind of be like, okay, today I'm going to focus on, copywriting, and then another day I might be focusing on some like really in-depth data analysis or user journey mapping or like search engine optimization. There's a lot of different things that I can kind of get my teeth into. So I think I wouldn't say like no day is ever the same, but I do have a lot of flexibility to kind of follow my interests and kind of be like, oh, that's interesting, I wonder what's going on there, and kind of dig into it, which I think is like a huge benefit for me of working in a really small organization, because it was a massive culture shift going from somewhere like the council with 10,000 or more employees, and every time you want to do something in the council, you have to ask 5 different people and get lots of different things signed off and get 3 quotes and do whatever, to working in a very small company where, if I want to check something, I can just be like, hey, can I do this? And then someone will just be like, yeah, cool, get on with it.
Yeah. I mean, it's because I've worked in plenty of roles of varying sizes, and I think there's a lot more to be gained from the smaller companies. There's a lot more camaraderie and stuff. But it is nice to be in a big organization where you've got quite a good team and a strong team that sort of gets on. So you've only been in this position 6 months. So did you interview for this during one of the lockdowns, or did you have a face-to-face?
Yeah, so my entire kind of application, interview and onboarding process has all been during the lockdowns. Like, it was, I think the first lockdown was my kind of like trigger for being like, I'm not really happy in this current role, I'm going to start looking elsewhere. And I think a lot of people did that thing of, oh, well, I've got all this time at home now, maybe I'll try and learn something new or try and do something different or whatever. So like pretty much after a couple of weeks of the first lockdown, I started applying for jobs. And yeah, I interviewed for this job all digitally, and I've still never actually been to our office or met most of my co-workers in person. Luckily, I came across this job kind of through word of mouth of a friend who worked at this company already, and I knew a couple of other people who worked there too. So I think that's been a big reassurance, especially when I was first starting and I was like, I'm starting this job online. I don't know what it's going to be like. I think at least knowing a few of the people was very reassuring, but I've never met most of them in person. Like, I don't know how tall anyone is.
Yeah. It's going to be strange of, like, you know, meeting your colleagues, like actually meeting them.
It's going to
Can
be
you
really
remember the
weird.
names of everyone? Like, you know, is it easy enough to remember everyone's names because you haven't got the faces to kind of put to them? And
I think because we do quite a lot of, they are quite good in that there's kind of a regular schedule of, you know, we have like a daily team meeting on Zoom, and then once a week we have like a whole company meeting. So I feel like I've been able to get to know people reasonably well. And I'll definitely know who each person is.
yeah,
but I feel like it will be weird seeing them and being like, oh, I didn't think you dressed like that, or oh, you're much shorter than I thought you would be, or whatever.
Yeah, it is crazy. So how was your actual in the last job? How long had you been in that position? So as we were going into the first lockdown, you must have been there how long?
I think I started the week of the lockdown. Like I'd kind of been doing one position, and my manager had gone on maternity leave, and I'd kind of switched roles, but was still in the same department. So I'd been working in that department for a year, but had switched roles, and within about 2 or 3 weeks was just like, no, I'm leaving. And then it took me about 6 months to find another job that I was kind of keen on. So yeah, not very long in that role at all, but it was a funny one because a lot of the stuff that I should have been working on that I was really excited about when I kind of took that role on, and all kind of got put on hold because of the pandemic.
Yeah.
Like there were some really exciting projects that were supposed to be going ahead with like a big community engagement aspect, and it kind of went from quite a cool sort of project manager role to more of a like crisis manager communications role. Quite quickly. And I think the pandemic really impacted the kind of dynamics of that department. So it was quite, you never really know what would have happened if there hadn't been a pandemic, but it's very possible, had there not been a pandemic, I would have stayed at the council for like another year or even longer. But I think the way things kind of pivoted at that point meant that it just wasn't really kind of suiting my interests so much as what the job I'd kind of originally signed up for would have. Yeah.
Was there any sort of fear about moving roles or looking for a new job during that time?
Yeah. Definitely. It was really strange. I think I was quite worried for a while that I wouldn't be able to find anything, because initially I think a lot of companies sort of kind of put a pause on their hiring for a while because they weren't really sure what the kind of impact of the pandemic was going to be.
Yeah.
And I know, thankfully this didn't happen to me, but I was aware of a couple of people who'd applied for like graduate schemes and stuff like that, which normally kind of go ahead on, like, you apply quite far in advance and they go ahead on the rolling basis sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I was aware of a few people who kind of had job offers, and then the pandemic came around and those job offers were suddenly kind of rescinded. So that was quite scary. Yeah, it was definitely, I think it took some kind of building up to be like, this is the right thing to do. And I tried to do as much kind of networking as I could virtually, and got in touch with everyone that I've ever met and was like, I think I want to find a new job. Who should I talk to? Do you know anyone that's left the council and done XYZ? And that's kind of how I got involved with Code First Girls as well. Like someone was like, oh, well, I know this person and she does this, maybe you just have a chat with her. And I just started like talking to random people on Zoom, or like just calling strangers and being like, help me find a job.
Yeah. Do you think that's that's the way to go now? Do you think that the old school sort of, you know, actually looking for vacancies and going through the vacancies, do you think that's gone, or at least on its way out?
It's never really worked for me,
I
suppose. Even when working at big organisations like the council and having to go through those processes, I've always found that like the biggest advantage you can have when you're trying to get a job is knowing someone that already works there.
Yeah.
And I think one of the main reasons I was first able to get my foot in the door at the council was because I knew someone that already worked at the council, and she was able to kind of tell me a lot of things about how the interview process works, what sort of things they look for, and I was kind of able to prepare on that basis.
Yeah.
And I think most of the jobs I've ever done, I've always had some kind of secret weapon like that, where I've almost had like in some ways a bit of an unfair advantage. But I like to think I just do my research. You know, it's its own skill. But
absolutely, yeah.
I definitely think it's a lot easier to get your foot in the door that way than it is as like a totally anonymous person who they don't know and you don't know them.
Yeah. The advice was always to kind of research the places that you're applying for. But, you know, it gets to a point of, you know, my many periods of applying for various roles, and you're just doing so many that it's like, you know, you're on, because it is just it's like a production line, just like firing out emails and stuff. But it's much better to kind of like sit down, take the time, look at the companies, look for people, look for connections, look for ways in, ways to be useful, all of that kind of stuff that they advise now. But then if you go to something like the job centre or one of these job programs, the first thing they're going to do is spend like, you know, 3 weeks telling you about CVs. And I don't know about you, but have you got jobs through CVs? Have people asked you for them?
I have had to submit CVs. My current job, part of the application process was definitely a CV. But I don't think I've ever got a job by just like sending out CVs willy-nilly. Like I definitely think you've got if someone asks for a CV, I guess you have to give them one, but I always try and make it very very tailored, and you know, I have like a template and basically do a whole new CV for every single application at this point.
Cool. So the job itself, I mean, it's obviously engaging you. It's nice. You're new in the role. It's still like keeping you interested. What are the sort of challenges with this role? What are the hard things that keep you interested?
I think the biggest challenges that I've kind of struggled with is getting to grips with PPC ads, Google ads and Facebook ads, and I guess all of the other kind of like LinkedIn ads or whatever. And I think stuff like that's so hard because there's so many different options. Like you're kind of presented with this platter of like every different targeting option you could ever want, different creative options, different copy, and you should write at least 5 versions of your copy and make sure you rotate it and do tests on different aspects of each thing to figure out which is the best one. And that is something I found really challenging, especially coming from the public sector. I was very used to doing a lot with a little, and we just never had budget for this sort of thing.
Yeah.
It was all about, you know, how can I get into community groups, or what can I do that's free, that's going to have a lot of reach. And there are certain kind of hacks that I found for doing that. But yeah, with PPC, that's something I'm still kind of really trying to get to grips with, is there's just so many different options that my manager will be like, okay, how much budget do you need and what do you think we should do? And I'll just be like, I have no idea. I don't know. You tell me and I'll see what I can do.
Yeah, but in 2 years you will. You know, you'll be all over that by then, just through the process of trial and error and trying different things out. So at the moment you're just kind of seeing what works, aren't you, really?
Yeah, definitely. And I think I have learned a lot in this kind of period of time. It's just getting over that initial knowing that you're outside of your comfort zone and trying to be okay with that, I think, because with like the other things I do, I felt quite comfortable with them, like email marketing. I'd done a lot of that in my previous role, and I was like, okay, yeah, I know what I'm doing here. I know what the stats I'm looking for are. I know how to write a good email to send to lots of people. But then going into PPC and just being like, I have no idea what any of this is, and I have to start somewhere, but I just don't even know where to start. It took me like a little while to kind of build up the courage to just go in and start kind of clicking around and trying to figure it out.
For anyone who doesn't know, PPC is pay-per-click, isn't it?
Yeah.
The company itself, you say it's a small business, small team. So are they in the tech sector themselves?
So it's basically a software development company,
right?
Making quite niche software that's used in the entertainment industry.
Yes.
So it's kind of straddling to, like, when we go to a trade show, it would probably be like a sort of TV and film trade show, but what we actually do is more software development kind of thing.
So there's what I was getting to was in terms of potential for growth. So I would imagine there's quite a lot of scope there. Is it a business that has grown quite a lot already?
Yeah, I think so. I think one of the things I do really like about this, they've got very strong values. And one of the things our CEO is always kind of saying is he wants us to kind of play the long game. So the company's been around for about 10 years, and he's kind of very focused on growth, but sustainable growth, I suppose. So I definitely think it's a growing company, and it's even in the last year, it's grown quite a lot. I think they've taken on 3 or 4 kind of new employees in that year, which in a company of this size is quite like a big percentage.
Yeah, it's a big increase, yeah.
But yeah, it's not kind of like there are some, startups that burn bright and burn fast. It's very much kind of trying to be a business that's around for the long haul and growing, but not in a way that it can't sustain itself, which I think it seems very sensible to me, because obviously if you can't sustain yourself, then nobody has a job anymore, and I wouldn't be able to pay my bills.
Yeah. Which at the end of the day is the most important thing.
Yeah.
So do you imagine any changes for this role coming from what's happening with Brexit? I mean, or are you in a Brexit-proof position / sector?
Honestly, I don't know. I guess we're not really. We do sell products across the whole world, but I think maybe we've been kind of shielded by some of the specific challenges of Brexit and also the pandemic, because we're not selling physical goods.
Yeah, is it all digital downloads?
Yeah, it's all digital pretty much. So I don't really know. I imagine there might be stuff that's kind of going on around that. I don't know if there is anything to do with, like, I think there's definitely been some changes in, like, the finance department and the way they do things. I don't think it's anything that's like, you heard, especially with some of the kind of businesses. I think there was one that, like, I really remember reading about, like, an eel exporter.
Okay.
Who bred and export eels to the EU. And they were having a lot of trouble with Brexit because the eels just kept dying en route. So I guess we don't quite have to deal with that level of logistical challenge.
No, I mean, it's probably like an extra form on your contract or something, and then like, oh, well, how do we cover the costs of this, and how do we adjust the price to make it fair?
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, pretty straightforward. I mean, that the thing is about being digital is that it is quite, you can be so flexible, and even with the production of physical goods, it's with, and I'm sure we're going to see more of this kind of coming online, more 3D printing and sort of fabrication labs and stuff. that doesn't seem to have taken off yet, or it's not quite ready to take off yet. But I can't wait for that. I can't wait to be able to, you know, like rather than waiting for your package to come from Amazon, you just find a design or something and then just print it out. And
Oh yeah, that sounds great. I'm very into that as a concept.
So you'll be working with screens all day.
Yeah.
You're sitting all day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're at home. Have you basically set yourself up with a home office, or are you kind of like laptop on the sofa? Or?
I think I've tried to set myself up with a reasonable home office. So I've got this is my conservatory. So it's sort of a greenhouse / living room / my office. And then my partner's working from home as well, so she's got her office set up in the spare bedroom. But we've only just moved into this house, so for quite a while my office was just like in the basement, in a back-to-back, which was not quite as nice. But to be fair, the office I'd been working in previously also had no windows, so it didn't feel that different.
Yeah, it's not great, is it?
No, but I try and have like a proper, you know, I've got like a proper chair and like a monitor and everything, so I'm not kind of like hunched over. So I suppose the only real difference in terms of like, I guess my well-being, or like, what's the word for it, occupational health, is I used to cycle, like I used to live about 5 miles away from my office, so I was doing sort of 10 miles cycling every day. And as much as I love not having to cycle 10 miles in rush hour, that was definitely, I had to be like, oh wait, so I have to just exercise voluntarily now, not just as a matter of routine, which was quite a difficult adjustment.
How much walking did you do through the lockdown? Were you out every day, or every other day?
No, because I hate exercise for its own sake.
Yeah.
That was why cycling worked really well for me, because I was like, look, I get up, I don't have a car, I have to get to work, so it just really like forced me to leave the house. I just can't do it. I can't make myself just go out for a walk. My manager has been encouraging us to do walking meetings though, which I feel like feels slightly more productive.
Okay, so that's an interesting idea. So what, all on Zoom wandering around chatting to each other in various parks? Or
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, it only really works if there's only 2 of you on the call, I think.
Yeah.
I've not attempted it for like a bigger call, but get my phone out, put some headphones in, and just go for a wander down the canal. And that's I definitely think that's like a nice way to kind of get out the house for a little bit. Yeah, I am looking forward to one day being allowed back to the office, because I think I think I'd like to do a hybrid thing, which is kind of what we used to do at the council as well, we'd do like one day working from home. So I think 2 or 3 days working from home, but I do think being forced to leave my house would probably be a good thing. Yeah.
I mean, was it quite easy to do the sort of working from home? It's a weird one. So I'm working for myself now, working from home, and I can find it sometimes really difficult to kind of motivate myself and kind of get things done. And other times you're just fine with it. And it's very easy to create a lot of mental excuses of like, oh, well, I can't do this because of this, and I can't, and I need it to be like that. But, you know, when it comes down to it, you just get on with it, you know, and you have to. Have you found any difficulty with that, or has it just been kind of natural to you because you've already had experience of working from home, and then to kind of go into it, was it quite an easy change?
It wasn't. I think it was, I didn't have to like deal with the kind of, oh, I've never worked from home, and like now we just have to set up all these new systems and all that kind of like logistical thing that companies that used to be 100% in the office, it was like, well, now we have to buy everyone a laptop and set all of this stuff up. I didn't so much have to deal with that, but I think the thing I find hardest working from home is like, sometimes you just have like a small question and it's just like, oh, what's the, I don't know, where's the place that I need to go to get this thing?
Yeah.
that's just like a really small question. And if you're in an office, you would just look at like whoever's next to you and just be like, hey, how do I do this? I think working from home, and especially starting a new job from home, it always feels like so excessive to have to like call someone and be like, I have a very small question for you. So I always just kind of find myself muddling through because I just can't like motivate myself to like make that phone call or send an email when normally you would just be like, hey, what's the deal with this? So I feel like that's
Are you what chat methods are you using then through this workplace? Is it Teams or is it Slack, or what are you using?
We've got it's like Slack basically. We've got like a free version of Slack, and then email as well, and Zoom. So mainly, I guess, Slack for kind of general stuff.
Is there a kind of culture developing in terms of these, because I've not been in a workplace for a while, and the last one that I was in, they were just starting to get into using Teams a bit more and so on. But it's really early days with all of that kind of stuff for most businesses. Do you think there's like a style of working that's kind of developed, especially through lockdown, of like how to use the chat in a kind of professional way and how we sort of engage with each other and get benefit from it? Or is it just like people put stuff on there and it probably gets ignored because no one's looked at it?
I think, a bit of both. I think you've got there's definitely like a degree of strategy. Like I always try, if I've got because there's a lot of the time where I have like 5 different things that I need someone to look at. And with Slack, I'm always kind of like, I can only ask someone to do one thing at a time. So I do try and be strategic and be like, here's the first thing I need you to look at, and then wait till that's done and be like, and then there's another thing, rather than trying to just dump everything in one big chat. I do think there's kind of a culture emerging there, and a lot of companies, I guess, also have tried to have some of the more like social side of things on Slack as well, by having like some informal channels for like new music or pets or whatever. I think as much as I think I really advocate for the option to work remotely, because I think for a lot of people it does have so many benefits. But I definitely think I can't kind of communicate in the same way digitally as I would be able to in real life. And I
was just going to say, do you think you would, like, if you had to work from home for the rest of time, it's just you're working from home now, I mean, would you be happy with that, or would you want you want that office contact? It sounds like.
I think I would be happy with that, but it wouldn't be like my first choice. But it wouldn't be a deal breaker for me. And I think it would be interesting to see when we kind of like, if we ever kind of come out of this cycle of, locking down and isolating and all these other things, and that kind of becomes redundant. I'd like maybe more of that kind of co-working spaces or something. Like I think equally I could set myself up somewhere like what's it called? There's a really nice place in town that's above Colours May Vary that I've totally forgotten what it's called. That's like a sort of techie co-working space, but it's really nice there, and I think I would be quite happy doing that, or like going to a coffee shop for meetings. But I think if it was like we are 100% remote and you are never going to see anyone in real life ever, I think that would be like a loss to me of some of the things I get from seeing people in real life. But if everything else was really good, I think I would be happy to compromise on that.
I think, if everyone, well, not everyone, because, that's just not possible, but if there were large numbers of people who were working from home sort of, and that's it now, I think it would very much change it would change your relationship to work and to what you're doing. It would certainly change your relationship to the company, because you'd have much different, like totally different contact with it. You know, it would be a lot more anonymous apart from when you saw faces on sort of chats and stuff. So yeah, I think that'd check itself out in weird and interesting ways.
Yeah, I do. It'd be interesting to see. I think the companies that are, there's a few companies that I've kind of seen who've been like, we're all going back to the office now, and they've just had like a quarter of their employees quit. So I think employers need to maybe, there's quite like a fine line to tread of like, if people have kind of grown to expect this as a right, you know, you can't necessarily be like, no, we're all going back into the office tomorrow. I don't think it's ever going to go back to that, because I think this like kind of being able to work flexibly or work from home is going to kind of be seen as like almost like a perk, or like a sort of a benefit of working for certain companies, and companies that don't offer it are going to start kind of losing out.
Well, it's also, I mean, it's not like you're necessarily getting anything. For some people, it is like a real benefit to be working from home. But you're also, where am I going with this? I've already lost my point. God, I'm useless. What were we saying? So they're working from home. Yeah, so it can be like some people really hate it.
Yeah.
And have a real hard time with sort of working from home and kind of getting things done. And they need that, you know, you need that extra space or different space to go into a workplace. But as well, it's just people undersell the other benefits in terms of lower carbon because you're not commuting, you're not traveling. And if there's people in the house, well, it could be more dangerous because you're isolated and you're at home and anything happens to you. But that's just being at home as well, isn't it? But yeah, so the time zone thing as well, I think, is an interesting one of like people can kind of choose their own hours if they're working remotely and they can literally work anywhere in the world. So there's that flexibility. What are the other sort of benefits? You get that extra time, like the company gets the extra time because, you know, you sort of, when you roll out of bed and you get your coffee and you turn your laptop on, there's those extra few minutes. I mean, that like the equivalent of like getting into the office in the morning with your whatever breakfast you've bought in a rush to get to your desk, and you're eating that as you turn things on. Yeah, I think the costs and you don't have to hire all the office space, so it reduces your initial costs, and the reduction in travel and people having to travel, I think, are both really good benefits. But yeah, I do think you need the physical presence, and like you say, like if you can't meet in coffee shops or something, then you do need a physical office space, or at least a co-working space where you book something. It's not really a question there.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the main thing, I guess, is just that I think the companies that are going to do well out of this are the ones that, I guess, listen and try and offer as much flexibility as they can to their employees, which I think, especially because it's a small company, NUGEN have been able to do a really good job of, and I think they will be able to almost have like a kind of like, here are your different options, and you can choose from these, and you know, you have to work these core hours, but beyond that you can kind of start early or finish late or whatever. I think that's the kind of setup that's going to become very popular, versus I think the kind of traditional, like you know, you're working a 9 to 5 and you work here is kind of dead.
Yeah, unless it's like, you know, a shop or something where it's kind of, you know, a bank. It's like, well, this is what we do. We're open 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. That's our thing.
Flexible working at Asda would definitely be an interesting thing to try.
So are you finding that you worked more or less from working from home, and do you kind of take advantage of the like being able to have the flexi time, or you're kind of on you do sort of core hours every day? How are you working it?
I think I'm probably, in my current job, I think at the moment the only real difference is the commute, which is like, do you class that as work or not? Nobody really knows. I kind of do. So I think because we've got like a sort of flexible work kind of arrangement, which works really well because it means that I can kind of, there definitely are times where I'm like, oh, I've got a deadline on this and I do need to work late, but I always kind of even it out when things are quieter by finishing early, or you can take an extra day off or whatever if you've done a lot of extra hours. So I think I work pretty much the same as what I would in an office.
I don't know if this has any sort of things here. I used to say to people, when you're interviewing for jobs and stuff, it's kind of like dating. Of they're getting to see you, you're getting to see them, and you do I like it? Even when you go into the building, because they're always talking about like how you should, when you're coached, like how you should present yourself and turning up early and like saying things and presenting this good impression. But it's equally the same for the company, of like how quickly they meet you, how they greet you, who comes down, how long they make you wait, like what the environment's like, what they take you through as you go into the building. And I would imagine most other people, as you go through that, you're kind of going, you're getting a sense of the place and going, do I like it? Do I want to be here? And those are the things that early on get you excited about a position. As you were saying with those jobs, of like some jobs that you're kind of more engaged with and other jobs that you're less engaged with. And again, the ingredients of that can vary differently. Sometimes it can just be the people, sometimes it can be the business. I'd like to get you to speak on that for a bit, and sort of what are your thoughts on that kind of thing? I mean, what I'm thinking of, like, what do you think are the things that are the ingredients for you that make a job, make you connect with a job, like get you involved, and it's like that's when you're like, I want to do a good job here. What are the kind of ingredients?
I think respect is such an important thing. And I think that was something that I really felt was kind of missing in some ways from my previous job, not from my like immediate team, but certainly working in a big organization like the council. You have 5 or 6 levels of management above you, and a couple of levels above my manager. I definitely felt like I was kind of working with people that didn't respect me and didn't respect my knowledge on the things that they were paying me to do. And I think one of the signs of like a healthy company is where kind of senior management hire people to do a specific job and then they trust them to do that job. Because as a like micromanaging, it just doesn't work. Like you can't do everything, you can't know everything. You need to be able to hire people to do the things you need them to do and kind of trust them to get on with it. So I think that's a huge thing for me, and that's something I'm really thankful for in my current company. I'll have a meeting with the CEO and I'll be like, well, what do you think about this? And he'll be like, well, I don't know, what do you think about it? You tell me, kind of thing. And we can kind of have those discussions, and I feel like my point of view is valued, and the kind of work I've done and the research I've done is valued as well. Whereas in the council, it kind of would often veer to a more kind of prescriptive thing of like, well, I'm senior to you, so I'm going to decide. And, I think things should be done this particular way because that's just what I think, and therefore you have to do it. Even though I'd be like, oh, well, I've researched this and I've done this research and this says this and this says this. And, I've kind of spent quite a lot of time forming a measured opinion on this, but you think something else. So, okay, I guess I have to do something else. Yeah. So I think
thanks for letting me waste my time on finding things out that you were then going to throw aside.
And there were just sometimes there was just some really silly things that would happen sometimes. But there were a couple of incidents where something would happen where like I'd write a Facebook post and like I would come back later on in the day and I would be like, that's not the post I wrote. And I would be like, someone's gone in and like edited that and just like added some emojis and like changed the wording around a bit.
Yeah.
And that was the kind of stuff where I was really like, what is going on here?
Yeah. And it is like, the worst case scenario is someone being petty and kind of like interfering, and best case scenario is I don't know what. Like, I just tried to make it better. I was trying to help. It's like, well, you didn't need to. It was already done. You know?
Yeah, and just stuff like that. I think, you know, I think being able to work somewhere where your opinion's valued, and also where, like, I'm not infallible. Like, there are times when things I do can be improved upon, but you know, I trust that when that happens, my manager will be like, I noticed you did X. I think it would actually be better if we did Y. What do you think about that? And then I can be like, yeah, that's good. I hadn't thought of that. We'll make that change together, rather than, you know, I feel like when things just are brought above your head or whatever, and it's like, well, I'm senior, so I've decided this, and you don't have a say. I think that's just a recipe for low morale, really.
Yeah. So let's go back to your workplace, your current workplace. And I just want to kind of touch a bit on customers. Like, do you have much or any engagement with your actual clients, or is it, I mean, I imagine you would, because you're doing some of the social media stuff, so you've got some engagement from followers and so on. I mean, is that something that is that a part of the job that you enjoy, or not so much? Like,
it's not
part of, well, I was just going to say, in terms of retail and stuff, like, part of the joy of that is that, and the horror is that you're meeting the public and you're working with people and meeting lots of people. So I'm just wondering how that plays into this role.
It's, to be honest, it's not something I do so much of in my current role, because we have like kind of a dedicated support team, and also a dedicated kind of like a, almost like a client liaison kind of team, or like product specialists. But I think it's nice in this job because most of the time when I do get to interact with people, it's people saying really nice things. So it'll be someone being like, oh, I love your products, and I'll be like, oh, thanks, that's really nice. But obviously in my last job doing social media for like, I had a lot more kind of engagement with the public, and it can be so varied. I think a lot of the time it's really, really nice if you can kind of build a relationship with people, and kind of, one of the nice things about social media is you do sometimes, you get people kind of coming back, and you'll have a little chat, and then you'll have another little chat, and you can kind of feel like you're building up a bit of a rapport, and kind of getting to know people on a level beyond just like, I'm a faceless brand. But yeah, I really enjoy public engagement, but it's also really hard and really draining. And I still do. I do it more probably in my freelance work, where I do kind of like teaching and kind of running sessions. That's like a lot more kind of customer facing. And I really love it. And I think you get such a buzz from like delivering a presentation, but also it's absolutely exhausting.
Yeah.
Like afterwards, it properly like knocks you out. And I think it's something that it's really hard to do that as like a full-time job, because you'd just be so tired.
Or you have to be one of those really hyperactive people who just have the boundless energy for that all the time. Most of us aren't like that.
I don't think it can be achieved without illicit substances, to be honest.
Or masses and masses of coffee, non-stop. So let's touch on your volunteering for a bit. I mean, is that just a matter of giving something back, or is there like, does it give you more like work satisfaction in that you've got another outlet, another avenue to kind of express different sides of yourself, different talents, different skills?
Yeah, I think there's an element of, like an element of kind of wanting to, I think, because a lot of the stuff I do is about like getting more women into tech. And I think a lot of that is kind of, I guess, like being the change you want to see, or like knowing that in my kind of degree, I was in a very male dominated department and found that challenging in many respects. So kind of on a purely selfish level, I would like more women to work in tech because it'll be nicer for me. But yeah, and it's also, I think it's a good way to consolidate my own skills, and I think I learn a lot about coding by trying to teach it. A lot of the time, kind of my students will ask questions and I'll be like, well, I don't know, we'll go look into that, let's Google it. So I think it can be a really good way to kind of fill in the gaps in some of my knowledge and kind of learn a bit more. And it's just quite fun, like especially the stuff I do with Leeds Library's Code Club. I'm like a volunteer for them, and a lot of it's about kind of teaching kids coding or like teaching kids electronics. And a lot of the projects they do are just really good fun. And I really enjoy kind of, you know, sitting at home messing about with a microbit, trying to get it to flash up the particular colours I want or whatever. And it's almost like a creative outlet, I think, in some ways, where it almost gives me a bit of license to be like, oh, I'm just going to spend a few hours working on something that's kind of objectively pointless, but I'm doing it for Code Club, so it's fine.
So do you get quite a broad range of ages for that, or is it?
It's so for the Code Club, it's Key Stage 2, so it's mostly, I guess it's sort of 8 to 12 sort of age group. And then the stuff I do with Code First Girls is a mixture. It's kind of anyone 18 plus, like there's a mixture of university students or kind of like people that have just finished high school, but also quite a lot of, there's a class I'm teaching at the moment that a lot of people are kind of career switchers, I guess you'd call them. Like there's quite a lot of people who have maybe been doing something else and are now like, actually, you know, I think I'd like to pivot into tech, because, you know, a lot of people are quite interested in it because it's quite like a flexible industry, and it can be quite good if you've got kids or need that kind of extra degree of flexibility. So I think, yeah, kind of, I guess across the board, you know, everything from 8 to about 40 at the moment.
If you're listening to this, then I assume that you have some connection to Leeds, like you live here or you're from here. If you are that person in Leeds or from Leeds and you haven't done a record for this podcast yet, please send me a message now. Let's record your working hours session. Just think, if you're interviewed now and then you're still alive at the end of this decade and we still have electric power, breathable air and our heads above water, then you'll be able to listen back to your interview and be all nostalgic about how different everything is now. Please remember to like, share and subscribe to this show. Please become a patron. It's only £1 a month. You know where Patreon is. It's /working hours pod. Please become a regular supporter. I will get to 1,000 of these episodes, but I will do that quicker if you like, share and provide some financial contributions, so that we can raise the operating ability to reach those 1,000 listeners. And of course, for any learner listening to this, the biggest help you can be is to come on the podcast. It's not scary, it's not stressful, and your voice will sound better with intro and outro music bracketing it. You can also appear anonymously if that helps. I am really interested to hear from anyone in Leeds or from Leeds in whatever industry, sector or role you are in. What is your experience? How do you feel about work? What do you like and not like? What do you do, Leeds? Email this podcast now, workinghourspod@western-studios.com, with a short bio and some suggestions of your availability. Send me feedback, send me questions, send me comments, send me queries. Follow the show on Twitter @WorkingHours3 and on Instagram @WorkingHoursPodLeeds. Next time on Working Hours, I will be talking to somebody else. I will probably put more of that up online as we get closer to it. I will be back, same Leeds time, same Leeds channel. I will have another one out next Monday. That's it. Take care. Bye-bye. Thanks for listening. Working Hours is presented, edited and recorded by Simon Treen for Western Studios Leeds Limited. The music was The Bees from Chopin's Etudes, which is in the public domain and was taken from museopen.org.